Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we want to do a very brief video here on Linux Lite. This is the Linux Lite release candidate 7.0. I should say Linux Lite 7.0 release candidate 1. So we are getting ready for a new version of Linux Lite, and I want to walk you through the whole process of installing this, setting it up, looking at the first steps, and just doing a brief analysis of what we have out of the box. So let's go ahead and start with the install. So let me undo this stuff and land ourselves right on our boot up screen. Once you get into the system here, you have the option to boot Linux Lite. You have a direct install. You have a compatibility mode, which is going to look for any free drivers, things like that. So this will work if you're dealing with NVIDIA or have something else that's not working right. And then, of course, you can check for file corruption or things. We'll go ahead and run the direct install here, as that's what you might want to do if you are installing this onto a computer. Now, remember, you can follow the same steps that I did on my previous videos looking at how to install Linux just on a Windows 11 computer or whatever else. This one here, we're doing it in a virtual machine just for the purpose of testing. But we'll get a chance to see how this guy looks. Landing on the installer here, we are first going to choose our language, and then our keyboard layout. And now we can choose whether we download updates while we are installing it. This is usually a good idea to do. And then third-party software. So this is things that are not going to be free. Some of these are proprietary, so check your country restrictions where you're at. Generally, this is okay, but you want to go ahead and have a look. It just deals with things that aren't available open source inside of the kernel. So now we can choose what we're doing with the disk. Do we want to erase the Ubuntu that's on here and reinstall, install Linux Lite alongside Ubuntu, erase the disk and install Linux, or we can do something else, which is going to involve more advanced things, creating your own partitions or things. We're going to go ahead and erase the disk, and under the advanced features, we have LVM with a new Linux install, and it's asked, do you want to encrypt it? Most likely this is ext4. We also have the ZFS, which we can also encrypt as well. And so, or we can just go with none. I generally like to use the LVM because, particularly in a virtual machine, it only uses the space that's actually being used. Otherwise, it will allocate the entire disk space that we have set up. And this is that final confirmation. Once you push continue, it's going to write the changes to the disk. So this will effectively wipe out the disk that is currently in the computer. And now we're going to choose our time zones. And then we'll give it a name. We'll just keep it Linux Lite. We'll choose my super secret password. That's definitely not 123. Of course, in production, you're going to want to choose a better, more complicated password for that. Okay, so at this step here, it's going to copy the files, install the system, and then tell us to reboot once it's ready. So we'll come back once the system is done rebooting. So Linux Lite, like many other Linux distributions, does have a nice, helpful welcome screen, which walks you through a lot of the early steps. So we have our contributions over here, how you can help contribute to the project. We have our support. We have a manual. We have a support forum. There's some online support options. There's some hardware database and information on secure boot and UEFI, which of course you can utilize with this particular distribution. Now, it does want you to walk through these 5 early steps. So this is really nice in that it walks us through some basic steps. The first is it wants to install updates and then any extra drivers. So on Linux, most of your drivers are handled inside the kernel, but occasionally you might have some proprietary hardware that needs a separate driver. And so this is the Ubuntu driver test, which is going to look to see which drivers might need to be set. We have a restore point. This is like Windows, where it'll take a backup of the operating system, but not necessarily your files. I'm not sure exactly if this one does your files as well. We'll look at that. We have language support, and then we have the selecting of your themes. So we'll go ahead and walk through this, and this is just one page which walks you through everything there. So if you click install updates, we need to enter our super secret password. That's definitely not 123. And we'll go ahead and let it do its thing. So what it's doing right now is it's going on, it's just checking to see if there's any updates. Now, since we installed updates during the installation step, there may not be as many, but I have found that even if you've done that, there's always still things that need to be done. So having a look at what we see here, there's available updates. So we have, looks like just a couple of packages here. Let's go ahead and hit the upgrade now. And then we'll go ahead and let it download the packages that need it done. You can see over here, they do have a separate tool which looks at the updates as well. We're not going to run that because this one's already running. But you'll see it will give us a notification. It's usually delayed a little bit, a minute or so into starting the desktop. But that'll always just check if there's updates to install. And unlike Windows systems, this is not going to install updates automatically. It's going to give you the choice. They might have the option to install them automatically. Some distros have that option. We can look at that later on here down the first steps here. So it says they are done. Would you like to view the log? We'll go ahead and hit yes. And then this is just going to show us what happened in the background there. It'd be nice if we had the option to see what was going on, but we don't have that. So you can see it's just downloading packages, installing things, and there's nothing there that is important. So there's step one. Step two is look for drivers. Now, since we're running this in VirtualBox, we might see a VirtualBox driver. We might not. Ubuntu usually puts those in. So here it actually says, yeah, there is VMware tools for virtual machine hosted, but it's already installed this. Since this is open source, it already installed it, and there's nothing else to do. So that is fine. Next is the restore points. So we have to enter our password again. And so this is effectively the time shift application. So it's setting up first the file system we have. We don't have the Btrfs, but we have the rsync option. So hit next. It's estimating the file size. And then what this is going to do is it'll keep a restore point. And then there's different options and settings that you have where you can choose how many restore points you have and what type of backups you're doing, which is always important to do. So you can see here that the size of this is 18. There's 7 free. Of course, we're doing this on a VirtualBox, so setting up snapshots is not going to work in this setting. You'd hit your finish option here to finish that. I'm not going to do that just because that what we're working with here with the virtual machine, we've only given it a few resources there. This is that time shift application that it launched. Language support, we can have a look at our language support options. Let's go ahead and close the web browser there. Language support is not complete. So what it's looking for here is there's a number of different English subsets of language, like Great Britain, Australian, Canadian. I don't generally want any of those installed anyway. Usually it's not a problem if you don't install them. This is something that some Linux distributions will do this. Some of them will not. Most of them, though, if you're selecting English, you will have this whole subset of languages. We can go ahead and hit install for that if we want to. Not completely important that we do at this point in time, but you can do that. You can apply system-wide, or you can install specific regions and things like that. So that is your language support. And then here does your system support UEFI or Secure Boot. And basically this says that if you are running Secure Boot with UEFI, you can go ahead and enable those in your BIOS. This should work. And then here, do you want to choose the light theme or the dark theme? I'm going to go ahead and keep the theming that we have. That is our initial setup of our system. Now let's have a brief look at the preferences here. So this is where it's going to check for updates. And so how frequently do you want it to check? Do you want it to always check? Do you want it to check every hour, twice a day, daily, weekly, or never? So if you don't want to be bothered with being notified of updates, you can go ahead and turn that guy off. That is not a big deal. Okay, so the other things that we have on Linux Lite, the things I've liked about it over the years is they do have their own comprehensive list of tools. Now they are dispersed inside the basic settings panel for XFCE here, and you'll see that they all have Lite next to them. So those are all under your system. So your Lite Auto Login. A lot of these are things that you can generally do on Linux systems, but you usually might have to go into a terminal to toggle some settings depending on the distribution, the desktop environment. What this, though, is going to enable you to do is if you want to enable auto login, you can go ahead and set that up, or you can disable it from here. This is the desktop. So do you want to enable desktop icons, enable, which icons, or you can set which icons you're disabling. So right now we have this PC, we have network, we have trash, we have user files. If I wanted to get rid of something, let's say I personally don't think this PC is as useful on Linux because it just generally opens up a file explorer to a directory that we don't have access to, whereas user files is the file that we want. So we can go ahead and hit disable that, and you'll see that it will get rid of that desktop icon. Lite info. This is not going to give us any information because we are in a virtual machine. If we were not in a virtual machine, you would actually see all of your hardware information and things like that. Here's shared networks. Do you want to enable any form of shared networks? So this is going to search to see if there's anything that's out there. So if you're sharing files between different things, that's fine. I generally cover that by my NAS controls all of my network shares. Of course, I can't show you that right now because it's not turned on. Here's your Lite software. So this is a tool that just gives us some specific software that is the most common software, so you don't get overwhelmed with absolutely everything. So first it asks us, do you want to update our software sources? Go ahead and hit yes, especially if this is the first time running the computer. This is going to sync all of the packages and make sure that all the packages available are in the system. So this way it'll boot it up, and then we'll be able to see what type of software we have. So you can see not installed status. Here's the software applications. Somebody asked about applications for different things on Linux the other day. Well, Audacity, this is good for any form of audio editing, audio engineering and stuff, full cross-platform, so works fine. There's ebook stuff. Some of these things like Dropbox, we have Edge browser. So some of these there's extra repositories that are not found in a lot of other Linux distributions. So this one does have more tools that are available than some other distributions out of the box. Not that you can't install things like Microsoft Edge or Skype on other Linux distributions, but this makes it a little easier to do that it's already in the GUI here, and that'll work. Here's your team viewer, Tor web browsing, here's virtual machine, video edit. This is shortcut to say video editing software. Which one's that? So you can see that you can install a variety of different things in here. This one here is probably going to be the Snap version of Firefox, but I don't know. Let's see which one we get. Let's see if we have a download log, what it's going to do. So Firefox now, since Ubuntu has been pushing the Snap packages, which are somewhat controversial. People always ask, so let me give you a very, very, very brief summary of what's controversial about them. Snap packages, while the package itself is open source, they are distributed on a proprietary and central database. That causes about half the people that come to Linux don't like that type of stuff. The other half doesn't care. And so it works for the basic user or the beginning user. I would not have a problem saying don't run snaps. But the problem we have is that for the people that get into it and want to be more focused on the privacy or the control aspects, then you might want to do that. Now, in response to Ubuntu pushing that Snap Firefox, Mozilla has released a deb file, and I'm wondering if that's what we have here. So we're going to go ahead and boot up Firefox, and this will tell us which one we have. So I'm just going to hit the Alt button there to bring up my menu temporarily, hit About, and you can see it says Mozilla deb. So this comes directly from the deb file that Mozilla gives us, which means that Linux Lite is actually doing it the right way. It's not just saying, hey, we'll just go ahead and install it through the terminal or whatever else. Whereas if I go in and I want to install Firefox, and I can do a sudo apt install Firefox here, then what happens here is it might want to, depending on how this is all set up, it might want to install the Snap version. Now, curiously, when I did my initial testing of this, and I went to install Firefox, it actually installed the Snap version, not the deb version. So there's some difference between running it in the live system and installing Linux Lite that causes it to have the deb version, not the snap version of the software. So that's actually good to know. I was actually expecting to see the snap version of the software there. So that's actually a really good feature. So I like that. So here's Lite sounds. So do you want to enable or disable system sounds? And here is the software sources. Okay, so this is telling us where we're doing our repository from. The default here is US English. Of course, you can choose which repository you want to use. So if you wanted to, if you're over in Germany, you might want to go ahead and select Germany and use this selected repository instead. By default, it's going to be grabbing the information from US. Now, this is Linux Lite branded software only, so only the things relevant to Linux Lite. Here's your system report. So a system report, if you have some issue going on with your computer and people are like, well, give us information about your computer, you're going to want to come in here to system report, hit create report. It's going to generate a giant list of things, and then it's going to give you a bunch of data, which on that support form, they might ask you to just paste that data right into the forum. They might ask you to use like a paste bin, but this is going to give us all of the information about our computer, and this will help the support guys know what's going on because they're going to look for different things that are causing some issues. So that's pretty nice there. Lite Tweaks. So this is a number of different things you can do. So you can see the grades. Some of these are safe to perform. Caution. This could involve this. So fixing the boot up. So if there's some problem with a boot repair, generally you'll be okay running this, but just be aware that it could cause a few issues. Kernel installer. So if you want to install specific kernels, you can do that. Here's log archives. This is just removing archives. Do you want to enable the number lock by default? There's just a number of little guys over here. TLP, this is your system performance. So that'll make some changes to how that works over there. So that's actually a really nice tool there. This is the upgrade. So we're running right now on the 7 release candidate. And if we were to keep running this and then the official one comes out, we hit Lite upgrade. It should upgrade it to the last known version. Here's our user manager. So we can choose, we can add new users, we can change passwords, and we can easily set which groups they're in. This is useful. Cinnamon does this as well. There's a few other desktops that do where you might have a problem running like virtual machine. If your user is not in the virtual machine group, you might want to go in here and add it. So that's a nice feature as well. This just loads up our welcome screen that we first saw when we started up. And then here's the Lite widget. I'm not sure what the Lite widget is. Oh, there it is. So Linux Lite 7 gives us our date, CPU usage, memory total, memory used. So we're at 950 megabytes. We're logged in as, and the firewall is disabled. So our update status is currently up to date. So that's actually pretty nice. So I like that little tool. And session and startup, this is where you can choose which applications are starting up. Here's your application auto start. So you might look through this and decide, like, I don't want Linux Lite welcome screen to even come close to booting. Do you want the Linux Lite login sound? I might, depending on what I'm doing, if this computer is never one I'm going to print from, I might turn off the printer applets, just saves a little bit of memory. So you might just sift through here and see if there's anything loading up. Now, if you're unclear what something is, don't disable it. Okay. It's like, I remember first getting a computer, there's all this stuff in this thing. And I was going into the C drive and randomly deleting stuff. And I wondered why my computer wasn't booting anymore. Oh boy. And then GNOME and KDE services on startup. So you might be running applications that require like a GNOME keyring or some other KDE backup service. You can launch those on startup as well if there's some application that you need to run for that. And so there is your basic run through on the Lite specific settings there. And over here, let's have a look at our basic applications. So everything does feel like a full system. We have a font viewer. We can do screenshots. Here's an archive manager. We can write USB sticks. We can format USB sticks. Under graphics, we have a document scanner. We have GIMP. We have Paint. We can manage photos. We have a basic drawing application. We have under Internet, we have Thunderbird, We have Firefox, which I installed. Google Chrome is the default browser. I'm a little concerned with that. Of course, I think they did it because most people are used to Google Chrome, but because I'm one of the guys using Linux for more of the privacy aspects, I'm not inclined to use Google Chrome. So what I would want to do personally if I was running this is I would go in here and I'd remove Google Chrome, and then I'd go into the software sources and I would completely remove Google Chrome repository, because every time you check for updates, it's going to ping your IP address off of Google servers. And so I don't really want to do that. Now, if we hit our software and update, this guy here is your basic Ubuntu tool, which manages your updates. This is where you would have access to information. So you can see this is where our Google Chrome is from. So if I were running this as a system, I would remove Google Chrome and then come over here and I would remove this repository here. So let's go ahead and enter my password. So I would just go ahead and remove that. This is the Linux Lite. So this is the applications. This is your Mozilla team. So this is the one that allows you to run your Firefox. And then this one gives us also, so it looks like they've also given us the deb file to always have the latest version of Thunderbird as well. So let me just go ahead and walk you through if you are a person that would want to uninstall Google Chrome. And I'm not saying everyone should do that. I'm just saying some people may not want that on there. So actually, let's do it through the GUI. I think we can do it through the GUI instead. So let's do Lite software. So we're going to go ahead and double check the repository sources. Now, I removed the Google Chrome, so it's not going to be looking for that anymore. But with all hope, the Google Chrome should still show up inside of the package list. We're going to hit our remove software. Oh, Telegram's installed? Really? Interesting. It doesn't say Telegram's installed, but it says Telegram is installed. Firefox is installed and Etcher is installed. That's interesting. I don't see Telegram anywhere on my computer, but apparently it is installed. So, but I don't see Google Chrome in there. So, unable to locate the package Telegram desktop. So, yeah, it's not installed. My system thinks it's installed, but it's not. And notice there that software updater is out of date. So maybe that's because it's a release candidate and there's still something goofy. All right, let's do sudo apt remove. And I don't know if it's going to be called Google Chrome or Chrome. Let's just try Google Chrome. Unable to locate package Google Chrome. Let's try this. Unable to locate package Chrome. Okay. Is it Google Chrome stable? Let's try that. Google Chrome stable. Hey, there it is. Okay, so if you're curious what an application is, you can always do what I just did there. Just go into the menu here, find it, right-click, edit application, and this will actually tell you what the application name is there under command. So you can see that it was installed under user bin Google Chrome stable, and so now we have removed Google Chrome from that. Let's go ahead and we'll update that there. So now Google Chrome should be removed from our system. Let's now go ahead and remove it from our panel, and we'll add Firefox there instead. So under Firefox, we're going to add to panel. That adds the panel over on the other side. You can hit your panel preferences, go down to items, and drag your launcher up where you would like that to be. So there we have it. We put that back in its spot. There we have it. There is our Linux Lite basic setup and usage. Overall, I really like this tool. It is pretty good. Obviously, I don't like it shipping with Google Chrome. There seems to be a few little artifacts on it. Of course, this is a release candidate, so maybe that is part of the problem, but let's go ahead and see what other things. I think we got off track here looking at the rest of our software there. We have a CD burner, media player, volume control. Under Office, we have the LibreOffice suite, looks like. Let's double check. LibreOffice suite. Since it was just saying word processor, wasn't 100% sure which one we had. But, of course, this was the dead giveaway. That's the launcher for LibreOffice. We have a PDF viewer. And then here's Package Manager, which I believe this is probably going to be Synaptic. And there's our firewall and everything else we have. So let's go ahead and close this out and close this out. So there is our brief look over at Linux Lite.